In the turbulent saga of the North Sea empires, few figures embody resilience and political acumen as vividly as Sven Estridsen, the king who would ultimately solidify Denmark's identity. Born around 1019, his life began not in the heart of Denmark, but in the Anglo-Scandinavian world of England, a testament to the sprawling influence of the Viking diaspora. His mother was Estrid Svensdatter, the formidable sister of Canute the Great, a connection that granted him a legitimate, albeit contested, claim to the Danish throne. His father was Ulf Jarl, a powerful Danish earl, whose own ambitions would cast a long and dangerous shadow over his son's early years. The political climate was treacherous, and in 1026, Canute the Great, suspecting betrayal, ordered the murder of Ulf Jarl within the sacred walls of Roskilde's Trinity Church. This brutal act of familial power politics forced the young Sven and his mother Estrid to flee for their lives, seeking refuge in the Kingdom of Sweden. For years, Sven lived in exile, a prince without a kingdom, learning the harsh lessons of diplomacy and warfare from the Swedish court. The death of Canute the Great in 1025 plunged the North Sea Empire into chaos, creating a power vacuum that ambitious men were eager to fill. Magnus the Good, King of Norway, seized the opportunity, extending his rule over Denmark and initially dashing Sven's hopes of a swift return. Sven, ever the pragmatist, initially served Magnus, being appointed as a jarl and governing in his name. However, the Danish nobility, resentful of foreign rule, saw in Sven a native-born leader and a symbol of national resistance. In 1043, while Magnus was preoccupied with battles against the winds, the Danish magnates acclaimed Sven as their king at the Viborg Assembly. This act of defiance triggered a long and grueling war for the Danish throne, pitting Sven against the formidable military might of Magnus the Good. Sven fought with tenacity, but was repeatedly defeated in open battle by the more experienced Norwegian king. He was forced to flee to Sweden multiple times, yet he always managed to return, his support among the Danish populace unwavering. His persistence earned him the respect of his enemies and the loyalty of his people, who saw him as the embodiment of Danish resilience. Fortune finally turned in 1047 when Magnus the Good died, reportedly falling from his horse. On his deathbed, Magnus allegedly declared that his kingdom would be divided. Harald Hardrada would rule Norway, and Sven would rule Denmark. Sven was now the undisputed king of Denmark, but his struggles were far from over. Harald Hardrada, the fearsome former commander of the Varangian Guard, refused to accept the division and laid his own claim to the Danish throne. What followed was a 17-year-long war of attrition, a relentless series of raids and counter-raids that bled both kingdoms. Harald, with his vast wealth and military experience, proved to be an even more dangerous foe than Magnus. In 1050, Hardrada's forces sacked the important trading town of Hedeby, a devastating blow to Danish commerce and morale. Sven, despite his strategic skills, consistently found himself on the losing side of major naval engagements. The most disastrous of these was the Battle of Nis in 1062, where Sven's fleet was almost completely annihilated. Legends say Sven had to escape the battlefield in disguise, seeking shelter with a common peasant who, unaware of his identity, chided him for his cowardice. Despite the military defeats, Sven's guerrilla tactics and the loyalty of the Danish people prevented Hardrada from ever securing control of the country. By 1064, both kings were exhausted by the endless conflict, and a peace treaty was finally signed. They agreed to recognize each other's sovereignty and restore the pre-war borders, ending the long and destructive struggle. 2 years later, Harald Hardrada, his ambitions now turned towards England, was killed at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The death of his greatest rival finally gave Sven the peace he needed to focus on consolidating his own kingdom. With the external threats diminished, Sven turned his attention inward, initiating a series of reforms that would define his legacy. He understood that military strength alone was not enough. A stable kingdom required a strong administration and a unified church. Sven cultivated a strong relationship with the papacy, seeking to free the Danish church from the control of the powerful archbishopric of Hamburg-Bremen. This was a bold political move, challenging the established ecclesiastical order of Northern Europe. He corresponded directly with Pope Gregory VII, a partnership that enhanced Denmark's prestige on the European stage. Sven's ambition was to have Denmark recognized as its own archdiocese, a goal that would not be achieved in his lifetime, but for which he laid the crucial groundwork. He reformed the diocesan structure of Denmark, dividing the country into 8 bishoprics: Lund, Roskilde, Ribe, Viborg, Aarhus, Odense, Schleswig, and Borgholm. This reorganization improved administrative efficiency and brought the church closer to the people. He encouraged the construction of churches, and under his reign, hundreds of simple wooden churches were built across the Danish landscape. These churches served not only as places of worship, but also as centers of community and administration. Sven was also a patron of knowledge and history, possessing a rare literacy for a monarch of his time. He famously hosted the chronicler Adam of Bremen, providing him with invaluable information about the history and geography of the Scandinavian peoples. Much of what is known today about the Viking Age comes directly from the accounts Sven shared with Adam. This act of historical preservation is one of Sven's most enduring and important legacies. In the economic sphere, Sven reformed the Danish coinage system, introducing coins with a standardized weight and design. These new coins, often featuring Byzantine-inspired motifs, replaced the haphazard mix of foreign and local currencies. This monetary reform facilitated trade and helped to centralize royal power. Sven also maintained a claim to the English throne, a legacy of his connection to Canute the Great. In 1069, he saw an opportunity after the Norman conquest, launching a major invasion of England to support the northern English rebels against William the Conqueror. The Danish army successfully captured York, and for a moment, it seemed as if a new Danish dynasty in England was possible. However, William the Conqueror responded with his characteristic ruthlessness, marching north and laying waste to the countryside in the infamous harrying of the North. Sven's brother, Asbjorn, who led the Danish forces, accepted a bribe from William and withdrew the fleet the following spring without achieving any lasting gains. Sven was reportedly furious with his brother's actions, banishing him for his failure and greed. Another smaller raid was attempted in 1075, but it also failed, marking the last serious Danish invasion of England. Despite these failures abroad, Sven's rule in Denmark was secure and increasingly prosperous. He had successfully transitioned Denmark from a Viking raiding kingdom into a more stable, European-style feudal monarchy. His personal life was as complex as his political career. He had numerous wives and concubines. This resulted in a staggering number of children, with at least 20 sons and daughters attributed to him. This abundance of heirs would ensure a smooth succession, but also lead to future dynastic strife. Remarkably, 5 of his illegitimate sons would go on to rule Denmark in succession after him. Sven Estridsen died in 1076, having ruled for nearly 30 years through constant warfare and shrewd diplomacy. He was buried not with his Viking ancestors, but in a stone pillar of the Roskilde Cathedral, the great church he had championed. His burial site, within the heart of the Danish church, symbolized the new direction in which he had steered his nation. He is often called the last Viking king and the first medieval king of Denmark, a title that perfectly captures his transitional role. He had inherited a kingdom defined by pagan traditions and the warrior ethos of the Viking Age. He left behind a kingdom with a structured Christian church, a stable monarchy, and a recognized place among the nations of Europe. Sven's reign was a masterclass in survival, adaptation, and nation-building. He lost almost every battle but ultimately won the war for Denmark's future. His legacy is not one of glorious conquest, but of patient, determined construction. He fought for his crown with the ferocity of a Viking. He ruled his kingdom with the foresight of a medieval statesman. The Danish monarchy he secured would endure for centuries, a direct result of his struggles. His mother, Estrid, also played a significant role, lending her royal lineage and support. She was buried near him in Roskilde, a recognition of her importance to the dynasty. Sven's relationship with the English church was complex, initially relying on English clerics. Later, he sought to replace them with clerics loyal only to Denmark and Rome. This ecclesiastical independence was crucial for forging a distinct Danish national identity. The king also had to manage the powerful Danish magnates who had initially elevated him. He balanced their power by granting them privileges while also asserting royal authority. His reign saw the beginning of the end for the system of slavery, thralls, in Denmark. Christian influence gradually pushed the society towards a feudal system of peasantry instead. Sven's court was a center of activity, attracting warriors, clerics, and traders. He understood the importance of sea power, even after his devastating naval losses. The Danish fleet was rebuilt and remained a significant force in the Baltic Sea. His foreign policy was primarily defensive after the wars with Norway ended. He focused on securing Denmark's borders against the Holy Roman Empire to the south. He maintained a careful diplomatic balance with his powerful southern neighbor. Sven's long reign provided a much-needed period of internal stability. This stability allowed culture and religion to flourish. The tales of the Old Norse gods began to fade, replaced by the stories of Christian saints. Sven himself was reportedly a good storyteller, captivating his court with historical tales. His knowledge of his own lineage was a key part of his political legitimacy. He connected himself to the legendary kings of the past, like Gorm the Old. The establishment of a clear line of succession was a priority. Despite having many sons, the transitions of power were initially peaceful. This was a stark contrast to the chaotic successions of the earlier Viking Age. Sven's laws began to codify Danish society, moving away from pure tradition. Land ownership started to be recorded, laying the groundwork for a feudal economy. The power of regional jarls was slowly curtailed in favor of the central monarchy. Sven's reign was a bridge between two worlds. He honored the courage of his Viking heritage. He built the foundations for a Christian, European future. He was a survivor who outlasted all his major rivals. His political maneuvering was as sharp as any Viking axe. He transformed Denmark through patience rather than conquest. His influence extended to the settlement of new towns and markets. The Danish language also began to evolve during this period of stability. Sven's legacy is written not in sagas of heroic charges, but in the institutions he built. He was a king who understood that true power lay in order and faith. His reign was a pivotal moment, turning Denmark towards medieval Europe. The Viking survivor had become the architect of a new nation. His immediate successor was his son, Harald the Thread, known as Harold the Whetstone. The peaceful succession was a testament to the stability Sven had created. Another son, Canute IV, would later be canonized as a saint. This sainthood further cemented the dynasty's connection to the Christian church. Sven's daughter, Ingrid, married Olaf III of Norway, sealing the peace. These marriage alliances were a key tool of his statecraft. He fought relentlessly when necessary. He negotiated patiently when possible. He built tirelessly for the future. The Danish landscape is still dotted with churches whose origins trace back to his reign. His name, Estridsen, meaning son of Estrid, honored his mother's royal blood. This matrilineal name was unusual and highlighted the importance of his Sinnock-descended lineage. He was a pragmatist in an age of fanatics. He was a scholar in an age of warriors. He was a builder in an age of raiders. Sven's story is one of ultimate triumph against impossible odds. He inherited acclaim, but had to forge a kingdom with his own hands. He navigated the treacherous waters of dynastic politics with skill. His alliance with the church was a strategic masterstroke. He ensured Denmark would not become a vassal of the German emperors, nor would its church be a mere appendage of Hamburg-Bremen. The king was known for his approachable and affable nature. Adam of Bremen described him as a most wise and learned man. His long and impactful reign set the course for Denmark's history. He found Denmark in the throes of the Viking Age. He left it on the threshold of the High Middle Ages. Sven Estridsen was the ultimate survivor, the patient king who built a lasting legacy.